Luis, welcome.
Hey Pablo, good to
How you
talk to
doing,
you.
man?
Good.
I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of people lately, huh?
Seriously, especially up here in New York. Do you want to do a quick introduction for the audience?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Luis Sanchez, and I currently live in New York City. I grew up in Florida, and I've kind of lived up and down the East Coast. And I guess professionally, I work in the investment industry, and I started my own investment advisory company.
And how's that going? Because I don't pretend to know anything about the markets and stuff like that, but I do know that it's been pretty volatile. I know since the pandemic, right?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year in my business for a lot of reasons. And it's so I manage other people's money, right? So there's a little bit of added anxiety that comes with that, right? So
I
when things start going crazy, I start getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of questions or
can
people.
only imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you had people just call you and yell at you?
No, I haven't had people call me and yell at me, but I have had people call me and say like they want to like completely cash out because they're nervous about what's going on in the world, and I've had to talk a couple of people off the ledge a couple of times or at least calm them down.
Right. What besides coronavirus, what are some of their concerns? Or is that
um
really what's driving everything?
I mean, it's funny, I didn't really want to talk about this, but with the election that we just had, I had a couple of those kinds of phone calls come in, where people were worried about that. And a lot of it, a lot of it is just like it's not necessarily having to that those aren't my normal calls, right? The normal phone
Right.
call is people just want me to explain to them what's going on. Like they say, "Hey, like I noticed this, like, but I don't really understand it. Can you explain what this means, or can you explain how this is relevant to things?" And I'll do my best job, right?
I think what you do and your knowledge is very underrated and overlooked. I know growing up, I never knew what a mortgage was. I never knew how to buy stocks. I never knew anything about the financial world, right? And then once you become an adult, that's probably your number one concern, right? Is income, investment, growing, making sure that you're not falling behind the curve.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and I think everything's relative, right? Like, no matter where you are in life, whether you're rich, poor, somewhere in the middle, um, people always have a way of comparing themselves to something else, right?
It's natural, yeah.
But I was actually listening to a podcast with the CEO of, I think it was Slack or one of these companies, and he had an interesting way to a way that he framed how he thinks about wealth. And he was like, well, there's in my mind there's like three levels of wealth, right? He said his first level of wealth was when he could go to a restaurant and not have to worry about how much the food cost that he was ordering. He's like, well, that was a good that was like his first level of wealth, right?
Hmm.
And then his second level of wealth was when he didn't have to worry about like his monthly bills, like how much his mortgage was or how much this or that monthly expense was. And then he's like, the last level of wealth, he's like, which I just achieved recently, was I don't have to worry about anything and I have freedom to do whatever I want and I just don't even think about it. It's like,
I mean, that would be nice.
right. I guess that's what people would refer to as like fuck you money, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But no, I agree. Like, um, financial literacy is not super high in this country, and it's not really something that's taught as much as it probably should be in like high school or college or
Why do you think that is?
um I don't know. I mean,
You would think that of all subjects, you know, I understand that biology is important and geology and basic math and all that good stuff. That I get it, but they don't have like a hey, this is money class, you know?
You know what's interesting is we learned so much stuff in elementary school that we've already forgotten and that has no relevance to our daily life, right? Like all the different like do you remember how to calculate the sphere, the area of a sphere? Or like
Absolutely not.
and when is the next time you need to remember the formula and you can't just Google it, right?
Oh
But
man.
then but then we give people credit cards. We give 18-year-olds credit cards with 25% interest rates, and then we make them debt slaves because they don't understand how interest works,
Right.
right? Or we don't explain what it means to invest, right? Or how to, how to track your spending or like, um, or even just tell tell people and just reinforce that people need to read things before they sign them and understand how things work, right?
Don't you just want to hit the accept button and move on?
I mean, yeah, it's easy.
Right? Um no, it's crazy because I was actually reading an article the other day. Well, I was reading several articles, but one of them said that the average American doesn't have I think it was like $500 in the savings account. So in case, shit hits the fan, they're not ready for that, right? At all. And then another article said that, the average 401k or retirement savings account for someone from 30 to 35 years old is only like 15, $20,000, something like that. And I'm thinking, man, we are so screwed.
Yeah, well, the one good thing about those stats is they've actually gotten better over time. So, yeah. So like as recently as like 10 years ago, only like 20% of the population owned a stock, like any stock. And now we're at a level where 50% of people who live in the United States have ownership in a stock. That's actually the highest level of equity ownership in the history of our country. So, there's a positive thing. And, another, I mean, I'm not going to say there's a positive aspect to this, but maybe for the wrong reasons, is actually just because of the stimulus that we have had this year due to COVID. The average person has actually more savings in their bank accounts. Um, Personal savings has gone up a lot, and maybe that's also, that's mostly because people got stimulus checks and there were some unemployment benefits that were extended. I think that's also probably a reflection of the fact that it's hard to spend money right now if you're just stuck at home.
Oh yeah. I know I've saved boatloads of money just from being stuck inside, right? Can't go out to the bar and get plastered every weekend. I mean, kind of you could, but it's just not the same.
I hear you. I was out last night and we have this 10 p.m. curfew and they cleared us out. So,
Wait, there's a 10 p.m. curfew now?
yeah, yeah. It's been, I think that 10 p.m. curfew's been around since they reopened things because last night wasn't the first night where they had cleared out the restaurant. They had last call at like 9:30 and at 10 p.m. they cleared out the restaurant and we all had to go home.
I'm trying to think if I've been out that late. I know I have, but that's interesting. What do you think's going to happen this winter? Because I mean, the next big wave is coming to New York, right? Are they going to shut everything down again?
Yeah, so right now we're recording this second week of November, and for all the people who are listening to this in the future and already know it's going to happen.
They're cheating.
But I honestly I don't know. I think I just read that yeah, they're thinking about closing down the schools in New York City again. And actually I heard something along the lines of this year people are going to go away for Thanksgiving break and they're not going to come back until next school year.
Have you thought of just leaving the city?
So my wife and I, we actually just moved to a new apartment in the city, and we definitely considered our options. But for a lot of reasons, practical reasons, we stayed. I mean, the biggest one is that my wife's job is based here, and she doesn't have the kind of flexibility. Eventually, her job is expecting her to come back to the office. Um, for what I do, because I can kind of control how I live, I can basically work from anywhere. And
Right.
I have clients like in all across the U.S., California, Texas, Florida, New York, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm very lucky, right? With my job, I can just have a Zoom call, and I can just kind of work from home if I need to, where I could still make a living this way, whereas a lot of people who are suffering because they work in a job where they work in hospitality, or they work in X field where they can't physically do their job right now.
They have to
Or
be present.
yeah, so but we actually basically just extended our 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 stay in New York, because we signed up for another year lease, and so we're gonna stay. I mean, we're still gonna be here. I think that we'll see how things play out. I mean, I'm pretty optimistic now that we're gonna have a vaccine, and things are probably going to normalize or kind of return to normal at some point. Who knows how
Mhm.
long that'll take? But I think things will kind of get back to normal, or like a new normal, soon enough.
Yeah, it's just hard to believe that we're living through this, right? I mean, I've been in New York now for coming up on 3 years, and the New York of today versus the New York of a year ago is completely different. Um but yeah, I mean, hopefully Pfizer and all those other pharmaceutical companies do come out with the vaccine. I was talking to my buddy. Would you take it? Would if they come out tomorrow and say anybody who wants it can go into CVS? Would you take it?
Yeah, I think I would just double check what the side effects are, and as long as they're not too crazy, yeah, I don't see why not. Um, so actually, it's an interesting topic, right? Like, do you think New York is gonna return to its former glory?
Without a doubt. I just don't think it'll happen as fast as everybody wants it to happen. I think the just the amount of people that are here, the amount of people that want to be here, and the amount of creativity that lives here.
You know,
You can't
that's a very New Yorker centric way to view it, right? Because I think that the tides might be changing a bit. I think that there's a large subset of people who only live here because they had to for the job they wanted to work in, but now that they can work remote, or honestly, I think it's become a little bit fashionable to say that you're leaving.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
last night when I went out, it was actually a going away party for someone who's moving to Florida. And I've had a few of those.
Yeah, see, I think it's very natural for this to happen, right? I think shit hits the fan. Those people with fuck you money obviously have either a second home, a vacation home, or they just go buy another home, right? And they can just leave and say that they avoided the pandemic of New York and maybe they won't come back, right? Because chances are, if they have fuck you money, they're not the youngest, right? Maybe they are, but I'm guessing most of them are not the youngest. People who have family members or their family is growing, they're like, oh, well, this is the opportunity for us to just get out, go buy a nice house, have space for the children, X, Y, and Z. They're out. But I think after that initial exodus, which I think we're still going through, um, there's just I just don't see how it's possible for one of the largest, if not, well, I guess the largest city in the U.S. and one of the largest cities in the world can just disappear. I
Well,
don't think that's possible.
look at Detroit.
Yeah, but that was completely different. They were completely dependent on the auto industry, and once the auto industry kind of screwed them over, I mean, what's left, right? I think New York is lucky to have all of the institutions outside of just, you know, the Google office or Bank of America Tower or, you know, whatever, JP Morgan. Outside of those, there's still, you know, some of the art exhibits, the museums, the tourist locations, the scenic views, the historical landscape. I mean, I went to Times Square, you know, a few weeks ago and it was packed. It was packed. People are still coming here. I just find it very hard to believe that this mass exodus is permanent. I do believe that those people that leave and have that fuck you money or families, yeah, they'll probably never come back. But once that happens, rent will go down. More people who have always wanted to move to New York will be able to move to New York and afford it and be more comfortable. And then slowly but surely, it'll just roll back right into where we were.
It's interesting that before the COVID pandemic happened, there was already a lot of net migration out of New York. So in like 2019, I think something like 80,000 people net migrated out of New York.
Yeah, I think there's always been um, that negative number for a while. I remember I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who used to work for a real estate company, and people were saying, well, he was defending the company because apparently there were rumors that they were building all these condos, but they were all empty,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't release them because if they did, it would bring the market prices down.
Yeah, it's primarily been an affordability thing.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Same thing with San Francisco, right? Once you make it so expensive and you accidentally tell all the people with the fuck you money to leave, who else can afford it, right?
I think San Francisco is a little bit different in that I think they also have an affordability issue, mostly because they haven't been building new houses. Like there's a housing shortage, but
Hmm.
there's also like a significantly deteriorating quality of life issue over there with their homelessness problem and
Right.
how bad crime has gotten. And the few times that I've visited there, it's been pretty noticeable.
Yeah, I've been there twice. I mean, it was one big trip, but still went there twice. And why do you think that is, right? Because I do remember there were some streets where it just smelled like urine and shit. And it's like, okay, why is no one cleaning? Why is no one coming around and saying, hey, dude, you can't use the bathroom here or you can't live here? And same with New York, right? There's been some subway stations that just get overrun.
Honestly, I don't really I don't have a strong opinion of why. My guess is that what do you like how do you deal with people, if you're going to sweep up the street, like where do people go? They have to go somewhere, right? And I think that it's probably just a lack of problem solving, right? But I honestly I don't know. I'm fairly ignorant, so anything I say on that is gonna just probably be completely wrong.
No, yeah, I mean, clearly we are not two experts on the
I'm
homeless
sure. I'm sure. Look,
problem.
I'm sure they've already done a lot. I'm sure they spent a lot of money, and I'm sure they've had a lot of city council meetings and things about that. And uh, I think one of the issues about one of the reasons why it may actually be worse in California than it is in New York is just the weather.
Oh, without
Like,
a doubt.
like if I'm gonna have that kind of lifestyle, I think I would rather do that in like Venice Beach than in Toronto.
Yeah, I remember in Charlotte a couple of years ago, I was at a party and we went outside to wait for pizza, and this homeless dude just starts talking to us. And I wish I had a podcast then because I would love to talk to him again, or have recorded that conversation. But at the end of the day, I mean, he just basically admitted that he was trying to raise money so he could buy a ticket to go to California because obviously the weather's nicer there. And yeah, if you're going to be homeless, what better spot?
Yeah. That's interesting. And I mean, I think I certainly believe that some people actually do choose to be homeless, although I'm sure that's not the majority of
Right.
people,
Right.
because I have spoken to a few people who have stated as much. And it's funny. I think it's actually a more common lifestyle choice on the West Coast. It seems like, it like when people have camp, like they have the tents, and it looks like a more of a permanent living situation
Yep.
as opposed to like in New York where we see a lot of people with like cardboard boxes. That's clearly not permanent.
Right. They're just sitting in the corner begging for money.
Yeah. Man, it's such a tragedy. Um, Obviously, and it is really interesting. I think it's probably one of the biggest humanitarian crises or problems that we need to figure out the best way to deal with.
Yeah, I think, and again, you or I are not experts here, but something that I remember from Hong Kong when I visited, and somebody told me this. I don't know if it was true. I just talked to the people that live there, but they were telling me that it's illegal to be homeless in Hong Kong. And so what they ended up doing is on the other side of the island, they built basically a shit ton of apartments. And they said, all right, cool. If you're homeless, you got to go live there. And sure enough, there's zero homeless people in Hong Kong. Um, and I think something similar can be done here, but at the same time, determine whether they are choosing to be homeless, if they got screwed over and that's why they're homeless, or if they have mental issues, right? If they have mental issues, try to get them help. If they're choosing to be homeless, put them in one of those houses. And if they got screwed over, find out how you can help them so they can get back on their feet, right?
Yeah. So I think that probably doesn't work in the US because you can't force someone to live somewhere, right? Like I think that's something that probably can work in China because there's fewer individual rights. So you can say no, you have to live there. You cannot live here.
Right.
Whereas I
All we
think
got to do is pass a new amendment saying you're not allowed to be homeless
but isn't that a violation of human rights? Of
to give someone a
of
home.
like American freedoms? Like isn't
Yeah, but at the
you
same
can't tell
time,
someone they can't not live in the forest, right?
right? No, but see, that's completely different, right? If you're not affecting anybody, so when people show up to New York and they see homeless people, they're like, "Oh my god, ugh," right? And then when you go to the subway and someone's begging you or hassling you for money, you're like, "Ugh, this again." You're impeding; those people are impeding on everyone else's rights to not be bothered like that.
Yeah,
Now, if you want to
sort
live
of.
in the forest by yourself, yeah, go for it, right? Like no one's ever going to tell you, no, you're not allowed to live in the forest.
Um, yeah, but there's all sorts of like public parks in New York where like I guess for our purposes we can call a forest where like people can just not harm other people and just hang out there. Although maybe theoretically they're impeding on public space.
Yeah, it's a weird dilemma. But I will, man, when I first moved here, I didn't realize how many parks there were and the amount of options. I mean, I can go to Central Park and go for a 6 mile run and not see the same thing twice, right? Um, Washington Square Park, Bryant Park, Prospect Park. I mean, if people that have never lived here or have never visited, I mean, the amount of parks have been crucial during the pandemic.
It is kind of funny. Um, is the the people. So my I grew up in Florida, and my parents still live down there, and I have a lot of friends who are still down there. And a couple of times I've gotten phone calls of people like concerned for my safety because they've seen on the news that like New York, there's
Is
like
on fire.
the murder rate is like tripled, or like there's some kind of like crazy thing happening.
Right.
And I mean, I've noticed some things different, but on for the most part, not much has changed.
Yeah, I mean, New York's gone through a lot this year. Pandemic, the rioting and the protest, the crime wave, and yeah, it's this is why I accept the fact that there's going to be a mass exodus, and I'm okay with that. Um, I know that when I go to the park and it's filled with people, I'm okay with that, right? When I go to a bar outside and they're pretty busy, I'm okay with that, right? It's not pre-COVID, but like you said, I mean, for the most part, you're still going to go out and about through your business, right? And do your business. It's sad to see so many businesses shut down. My favorite Thai restaurant shut down. I've seen a lot of karaoke places shut down. But I am a firm believer that it will come back even better. It's just going to take time.
So it sounds like, to flip the question onto you, have you thought about leaving?
I have thought about leaving, but only for 2 or 3 months and then coming back. Um, and that's not even just because, the city is quote unquote dead, but I do see this as an opportunity for those lucky of us that can work from anywhere. I mean, I've said this before, but I am one of those people that has been affected minimally, right? I still have a job. I still have all my benefits. I didn't lose hours. I didn't lose pay. I didn't do anything, right? The biggest impact on me has been, oh, you can't go to the bar every single day and ride the subway 24/7, right? That's been my biggest impact. So I'm lucky.
Yeah,
So
I remember you were texting me that you couldn't pursue your stand-up career.
right. And it's kind of like, hey, you know what? If that's the biggest hit I'm going to take, I am more than happy, right? Because I've seen so many people just lose jobs and struggle to feed their families. And, as soon as the pandemic hit, I started donating to all of these food banks because I know that they have it hard.
Do you know anyone who's a full-time stand-up comedian who was like relying on that?
No, I don't know any full timers. I know for sure myself and a lot of the people that I did know kind of took a time out. And I'm just now starting to think about getting back into it, um, because a lot of people try to do the Zoom comedy shows, and I mean they just look awful. Like I can't imagine not having feedback from an audience. Right? It's already awkward enough putting yourself in that situation. Now you can't even tell what's going on. I don't know. That just sounds awful. Was that the last time that I saw you at the Gotham Theater when I performed?
Um, I think no, I think we hung out one other time at my office.
Oh yeah, I think we grabbed some beers from the WeWork place, right?
Yeah, probably.
That sounds about right. No, I have thought about leaving, but not permanently, just for a little bit, just so I can honestly just travel. I've thought about going to Mexico. I've thought about going to, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest. I mean, obviously now it's probably not a good idea to go to the Midwest because they're exploding with COVID cases. But I don't know, just again, out of that luxury of being able to travel and being able to afford it, right? But no, I don't want to leave New York anytime soon. And if I do want to continue doing stand up, I believe that New York is one of the greatest places to be to do that, right?
Yeah, I agree for sure. There's so many clubs, and hopefully they'll come back soon, and we can start enjoying it again. I mean, I'm a pretty big comedy nerd. I really like to go see shows, and
They're doing a lot of rooftop shows now. Have you seen those?
I haven't. I haven't seen anything
Yeah,
recently.
yeah. Like I said, I'm starting to get my feet back into it, and I think I there's a charity event coming up. I think in December that I signed up for. It's going to be a Zoom comedy show, and I'm going to hate myself for doing it, but I figured it's the motivation that I need to actually get back into it. Um, but yeah, I do plan on exploring those avenues of rooftops and not the park. I think the park. I saw a comedy show at the park one time. It wasn't half bad, but it's just so open that it just felt weird for me personally.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. Like 2019 feels so long ago, and to remember how we were navigating the city and how different things felt.
What's one thing that you miss that it's just not possible today?
Yeah, I mean, comedy shows is definitely one of those things.
Yeah.
I still I still go into my office, or I started going back into my office, but there's no like socializing. It's pretty much empty. It's a ghost town. There's no like happy hours. I recently started to like get dinner with people again and like have more normal social patterns.
Mhm.
So that's kind of coming back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just I think the biggest reason why we're in New York City, at least the reason why I'm still here, is because I mean, I'm here for the people. Like we're social animals, and my theory has always been that New York is just a magnet for like really smart people, really interesting people. And I just miss meeting new people and like getting out there and just talking to people and having, social interactions.
Yeah, I think um for those of us who are fortunate enough to not be too impacted, I think that's definitely the number one thing, right? Being social, going out, meeting people, and learning new things, right? I miss bumping into random people at the bar and they just start telling me about New York City history, right? And it's like, okay, I'll buy you another round. Keep going, right? That was fun.
Yeah. So then the thing that in the back of my head last night when we're talking to our friends who are leaving, moving to Florida, it's just like, well, how long before you're just bored out of your mind down there?
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be quite the adjustment.
Yeah. I'm going to be talking to a buddy of mine soon. He moved to Florida from New York like about 2 years ago, I think. Um, and now he lives in Phoenix. And when I was catching up with him the other day, he was like, "Hey, yeah, it's a lot of shopping malls, and you got Mexico 3 hours south, you got Las Vegas 3 or 4 hours north, and then you got California 4 hours that way, and then you got whatever else that 3 hours that way." And I'm like, man, so you're telling me that you're just sitting there driving from shopping center to shopping center? Like that for me as a social person, that sounds miserable.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things I enjoy the most about New York is I don't have to have a car. I can it's like a 5-minute walk to where I work, and I can hop in the subway, or like the thing that I've been doing a lot of this year is the public bike share
The
thing.
the city bike.
Yeah, I've been using that a lot, and that's been awesome.
Right? I regret not doing it as soon as I got here to New York. I started last year and it's amazing.
I was so intimidated originally. I was like, well, that's crazy. Like, how long before I get
Yeah,
hit by a car?
dude, I was the same way. I would see people riding bikes in the street and I'm like, dude, they have a death wish. They have a death wish.
Right? It's crazy. And and it probably was more dangerous at first. But now I'm sure like cars have gotten a little bit more accustomed to having to deal with bikers, and there's probably more bike lanes too.
Yeah, that's for sure. No, it's I think New York is definitely a beautiful place because last time I was in Charlotte, oh man, I was at my buddy's house. I'm not, I don't have a car there. And I'm like, man, I just want to grab like a snack, right? I look up on Google where the nearest store is, and it'd be like a 30-minute walk, 40-minute walk, and there might not even be sidewalks. And it's like, damn, okay, I guess I'll just stay here. And when you're in New York, you go within 2, 3 blocks and you have almost whatever you want. It's hard to beat that.
Now let's just hope that it stays like that. That's the thing is
Yeah.
we just don't want it to change, and we're kind of, or at least change in a bad way. And honestly, if this COVID thing, if this pandemic goes on for another 5 years, I mean, it'd be pretty hard for New York to stay the way it is.
Yeah, I think if this were to be a long-term thing, then yes, I think that's a different story, right?
Yeah, and I was actually talking to a friend the other day, and they said that they know someone who had COVID in March and got reinfected in
Really?
October. And their basic point to me was that they think this is the new normal, and they think that we're gonna constantly oscillate between opening up and shutting down, and we're gonna have to wear a mask forever. And I was like, man, I hope not, and I don't believe you. And I think,
Liar, liar, liar.
well, it's one of these things where it's like, look, if we still have this by the end of next year, at what point do we just accept that this is just part of life, and just accept that um that's just another another risk? I don't know. Can we can we really live like this forever? Is this really a way to live?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about that because that's beyond depressing.
It was a sad thought, right? And it was before
Yeah.
they had this recent vaccine news. But now they're also saying that COVID-19 may have mutated and the vaccine may not cover the new mutation. So look, I think there's always going to be people
Yeah.
who are like pessimistic, right? And I'm always going to come out on the more optimistic side of that, more so for my own sanity than
Oh yeah.
for anything else.
Oh yeah. No, well, I was talking to one of my best friends, Robbie, who's a nurse, and I mean, he basically said he's predicting that this is going to be like the flu, right? Every year you're going to have to get a vaccine. Every year there's going to be a new strain. Every year, whatever. And I hope he's wrong because I literally told him that my theory is that the vaccines that come out will essentially wipe it out. And then we don't have to worry about it in a few years, right? Ever. But he doesn't believe that.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, it's a weird time to be alive, that's for sure. And I'm not sure if I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Luis, thank you so much for making the time, man.
Yeah, no problem.
It was really nice catching up with you a little bit. Hopefully we'll see each other soon. And hey, man, if I start finding these cool little stand up locations that are safe, I'll make sure and pass it along so you can come and enjoy a show or two.
I'd love that.
All right, Luis. Thank you again. I'll talk to you later, man. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.